What if one day, while going through airport customs, a man handed you a passport from a country that doesn't exist on any map, past or present? And what if this man insisted with calm certainty that not only does his country exist, but it has stood for over 1,000 years? This is not the plot of a science fiction novel. This is the strange and chilling tale of the man from Taured, a story whispered in conspiracy circles, discussed in mystery forums, and retold in hushed tones by those who believe the boundaries of reality are thinner than we think. It all starts in the year 1954 in Japan, at the Haneda Airport in Tokyo, when a man arrived on a routine European flight and claimed to be from a nation no one had ever heard of, Taured. This isn't just about a passport, a country, or even one man's disappearance. It's about something deeper. It's about the possibility that there are cracks in our reality, that the world we know might only be one version of the truth, that timelines may bleed into each other, or that we occasionally catch glimpses of parallel dimensions. Let's go deeper. It was a humid day in July when he arrived. A middle-aged European-looking man stepped off the plane at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. He was dressed like a businessman, grey-tailored suit, briefcase in hand, clean-shaven, calm. In every way, he looked like any other foreigner traveling for work, except he wasn't. At customs, officers asked for his passport, and that's when everything changed. The passport looked authentic. It had stamps, visas, security features, but the country printed on it, Taured, was a problem. It didn't exist. The man was polite but confused. When officials told him that there was no such country, he laughed. He pointed at the passport. He showed them past stamps that indicated he had visited Japan before. He even pulled out currencies from several European countries, credit cards from a European bank, and company paperwork. Everything pointed to a man with a well-documented history. But the central question remained, where was Taured? To prove his point, the man was given a map. Without hesitation, he pointed to a region near the border of France and Spain. "There it is," he said confidently, his finger landing somewhere near Andorra. "Taured has been there for over 1,000 years. The officials looked at him in silence. There was nothing there, only Andorra. The man seemed surprised, even distressed, but still remained calm. That calmness is what puzzled everyone. He didn't behave like someone lying or playing a prank. He acted like a man genuinely caught in something impossible. Airport security was alerted. The man was taken into a private room for further questioning. There he shared more details. He spoke French fluently and also Japanese, Spanish, and German. He explained that he was a business consultant and was in Japan for the 3rd time that year to meet with a client. He even gave the names of the company he worked for and the client he was visiting. Officials started calling the company. It didn't exist. They called the hotel where he had supposedly booked a room. No reservation. They called the client. No such company. And still, the man remained convinced. "This must be a mistake," he said. "I've been here many times. I flew in just last year. Your airport looked the same. The customs officers wore the same uniforms. Sai Hotel was just down the street from here." There was no evidence that he was lying, but nothing he said checked out. To prevent panic or something worse, the authorities decided to detain him overnight. He was placed in a high-floor hotel room under guard, while officials investigated further. They took his documents, suitcase, and passport for analysis. 2 guards were stationed outside his room. The windows were sealed, the door locked, no escape. And yet, by morning, he was gone. The guards swore they had not moved. The door had not opened. The room was sealed. But the man was no longer there, and neither were his belongings. His passport, documents, and even clothes had disappeared from the security office where they were being examined. A search began immediately. They checked every camera, every hallway, every possible exit. Nothing. The man from Taured had vanished into thin air. Official records make no mention of this event. No name was ever given. The airport never confirmed the story. But the tale has endured, passed down through whispers, books on anomalies, and videos that question the fabric of reality. So who was the man from Taured? Some say he was a time traveler. Others believe he slipped through a parallel universe, a place where Taured does exist, where history took a different turn. Maybe in his world, World War II ended differently. Maybe in his reality the maps are not the same. Perhaps Taured was a small kingdom that thrived instead of disappearing under the weight of European geopolitics. Others propose a darker theory, that he was part of an experiment, a test of teleportation or dimension jumping that went wrong, or maybe went exactly as planned, that the disappearance was staged, that he was retrieved or eliminated. But there's also the possibility that he was simply mad. That the whole thing was a carefully constructed fantasy. But then again, how do you fake a passport from a country that never existed? How do you disappear from a locked room? This story pushes us to ask uncomfortable questions. How solid is our reality? Could parallel timelines coexist just slightly out of phase with ours? Could our world be one version of many? And most importantly, if someone from another version of Earth stumbled into ours, would we even notice? In the days that followed, whispers of the incident began circulating among a handful of airport workers and security personnel. Though no official statements were made, the story was impossible to contain. A man vanished from a sealed room. A passport from a non-existent country had been examined. Documents that shouldn't have existed were now missing without a trace. And the strangest part? The more people talked about it, the more details seemed to slip away, as if the memory of the event itself was being erased or rewritten. That's where the mystery deepens. Across the world, similar cases have been reported. People appearing in the wrong place, speaking of places that don't exist, holding currencies, documents, or items from unfamiliar nations. Most are written off as hoaxes or mental illness. But every so often a detail emerges, something just too precise, too real to ignore. Could it be that these incidents are connected? Could the man from Taured be one of many? In the world of theoretical physics, there's a concept known as the many worlds interpretation. According to this theory, every decision, every event creates a new branch of reality. Countless versions of Earth, countless versions of us. In one world, the Roman Empire never fell. In another, electricity was never discovered. And maybe, in one of them, there is a country called Taured. What if the man's plane didn't fly through space alone, but through dimensions? Consider this. Commercial airliners travel at high altitudes, cutting through the planet's magnetic field, surrounded by radiation and electrical disturbances. Could this create a rare but possible rift in reality? A moment, a sliver of time, where two dimensions overlap, just enough for someone to step through? It sounds impossible, but so did flight once. So did the idea of sending messages through invisible waves. So did landing on the moon. If parallel universes exist, and if they sometimes intersect, then Taured may not be fiction. It may be history, just someone else's. Let's go back for a moment. Picture the man again, sitting calmly in that sterile interrogation room, the fluorescent lights buzzing above him, the officials growing more anxious with every answer. But not him. He was confident, relaxed, not arrogant, but certain of his reality, certain that he was being misunderstood. Not once did he act as if he were caught or cornered. It was as if he believed that eventually things would make sense, that someone would recognize Taured, that he would go about his day like any other. That detail matters. In most hoaxes, the person eventually breaks. They show cracks. They try to escape, or plead, or confess. But the man from Taured never did. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was simply trying to understand why no one else could see what he saw. Some researchers have gone back to old maps, especially ones from medieval times. There are occasional mentions of places with similar-sounding names: Taured, Taured, even Tauresium, the ancient birthplace of Emperor Justinian III. But none match the exact description the man gave. None of them sit where Taured should be. Still, some believers claim that small distortions in geography may hint at alternate timelines, where these places continued on a different path. Maybe in his world, a tiny kingdom survived where Andorra now stands. Maybe it flourished, established trade routes, became recognized. Maybe it even joined the United Nations. Maybe it printed passports, formed banks, opened embassies. All of this begs another question. If he truly came from another dimension, how did he get here? And why did he disappear? Some suggest he was retrieved, pulled back into his reality by whatever force or system accidentally dropped him off here. Others say he might have been eliminated to prevent the collapse of dimensional integrity. a concept explored in science fiction but echoed in quantum mechanics. Imagine a ripple in time where a person doesn't belong. The longer they stay, the greater the risk of instability. Or maybe he simply phased out, like a radio signal losing frequency. One moment here, the next, gone. What's frightening is not the event itself, but what it implies. It suggests that reality is not fixed, that it is fragile, that with the right or wrong circumstances, we too could end up somewhere foreign, familiar, but not quite right. Imagine waking up in a world where your country doesn't exist, where no one remembers your name, where everything is almost correct, but just enough off to make you question your own mind. That's the true horror of the Taured mystery. Not the man, not the passport, but the feeling. That quiet, creeping unease that we might not be as anchored as we think. Some theorists have tried to trace the identity of the man. They've dug into immigration records, hotel logs, and news archives from 1954. But there's nothing, not even a blurry photo. No witnesses willing to go on record. It's almost as if the story itself was designed to vanish, to test us, to see if we're paying attention. Still, the tale survives and grows. There are entire online communities dedicated to this single mystery, Reddit threads that stretch for miles, YouTube videos with millions of views, podcasts exploring every detail, every theory, every possible explanation. Some believe he was an alien. Others say he was a government test subject. Others still think he was a traveler from a distant future, sent back by accident or design. The variety of explanations tells us something important. People are hungry for the unknown. We crave mysteries that challenge the rules, that break the pattern, that whisper, maybe there's more. Because deep down, we want to believe that our world isn't limited to what we can see, that there are doors left to open, shadows left to explore. The story of the man from Taured may never be confirmed. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not about proof, maybe it's about the possibility. Maybe it's about looking at a map and wondering what lies just beyond the edge. In the quiet corners of our minds, there's a place reserved for the unexplainable, the things that logic can't quite touch, but that refuse to be ignored. The man from Taured lives in that place, not as a legend carved in stone, but as a whisper, a reminder that even in a world run by satellites and science, there's still room for wonder. Let's step back for a moment and imagine, what if the man never actually left? What if he didn't disappear, but rather our perception of him did? What if our reality is programmed, layered like pages in a book, and someone just turned the page? This idea isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Some physicists propose that what we perceive as reality is merely one frequency, one vibration of countless others, and like a radio that tunes into a different station, sometimes, just sometimes, we catch echoes of another. If that's true, then maybe the man from Taured was simply a glitch in the signal, a momentary overlap. And maybe in his world there's a man right now telling the same story, but in his version Japan doesn't exist. Or maybe Earth isn't even called Earth. It forces us to consider, how many times has this happened before? How many others have slipped through? Have you ever met someone who seemed out of place, whose knowledge didn't match the time, who claimed memories that didn't align with history? Did you laugh it off? Did you ever think, even for a second, that maybe they weren't wrong? History is full of anomalies. Stories of people who speak dead languages fluently, children who recall lives they've never lived, travelers who vanish without a trace, or who appear in places they should have never reached. We dismiss them as coincidence, madness, or hoaxes. But what if they're all connected? What if they're puzzle pieces to a larger picture we haven't yet understood? The man from Taured isn't important because of what he said or where he went. He's important because of what he represents, a crack in the wall, a moment when the impossible became visible, and then, like a breath in cold air, vanished. Some researchers believe these events are increasing, that strange encounters, displacements, and unexplained phenomena are happening more frequently. Is something changing? Is the boundary between dimensions weakening? Or are we simply becoming more aware? One theory suggests that our collective consciousness is evolving, that as more of us believe in the possibility of multiverses, reality begins to reflect it. That thought has power. That belief bends the structure of what is. If that's true, then the man from Taured may be a signpost, a symbol that we're on the verge of something new, a crossing point between science and mysticism, between what is known and what is felt. It's easy to dismiss these things, to stick to what's safe. But think of how often that's held us back. Once we believed the earth was flat. Once we believed the sun revolved around us. Once we believed flying was impossible. Reality has always been a moving target. What makes the story of Taured so powerful is that it doesn't try to convince you. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply sits there, patiently, asking, what if? And that question is dangerous. Because once you let it in, really let it in, you start to see things differently. You begin to question your memories, your routines, the way the world fits together. You start to wonder why certain things feel off, why some places seem familiar when they shouldn't, why déjà vu exists, why some dreams feel like more than dreams. Could those be memories from another version of you? Could your intuition be a signal from a world you can't see? Could reality be less like a straight line and more like a web, with countless threads crossing over, knotting, tangling, and breaking? The man from Taured might never return, or maybe he already has and we just don't remember. Maybe he walks among us now in another form. Maybe we passed him on the street today. Maybe he's watching this video wondering how we ever found out. The truth is, we may never know what happened in that airport room in 1954, but we know something did, something unexplainable, something that slipped through the cracks of logic and left behind a story too strange to ignore. And that's enough, because it means the world is still mysterious, that we haven't figured everything out, that despite all our technology and science, there are still doors waiting to be opened. So the next time someone tells you a story that seems too impossible to believe, pause, listen, not with doubt but with curiosity, because within the impossible might be a glimpse of something real, something extraordinary. And maybe, just maybe, that man from Taured was never lost. Maybe he simply went home. Thank you for walking through this mystery with an open mind. Whether you believe the man from Taured was a traveler from another dimension, a hoax, or something stranger still, the important thing is that we're still willing to ask questions, to imagine, to wonder. Because when we stop questioning what's real, we stop growing. And who knows? Maybe your own story is just one step away from becoming the next great mystery. Would you recognize it if it arrived with a passport?